Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're breaking down 10 of the best ring exercises to build strength, improve muscle endurance, and boost overall body control. And the best part is that it's not just about getting stronger. Training on rings is fun, keeps you motivated, it's humbling, but will also help you feel more confident. So now let's jump into the first part of our 10 best rings exercises to build upper body strength video. In this portion, we'll go over the first 5 exercises. Let's get started. First up, we're going to start with a classic chest exercise, the push-up. This will be done on the low rings. We're going to get in the high plank position with the palms facing each other, which is the neutral grip. Arms are locked, shoulders are directly on top of hands, feet are together, the core and glutes are engaged, and we should be making a straight line from head to toe. Now, before descending into the push-up, I want you to think about actively pushing and driving your feet into the ground, and this will turn on your core nicely. As you descend into the push-up, have your elbows tracking backwards to about that 45-degree angle, go as low as you can, and then push back, return to the high plank position with the arms locked and the rings turned out. Now we want to make sure we have a slow and controlled tempo and that we finish the lockout after each rep. Now let's talk about some of the common errors that people make. The first is sagging hips. Now you want to start off this plank position with a neutral spine by turning on your core and performing the posterior pelvic tilt. A lot of us start with a little bit of a relaxed position and maybe a little bit of an arch, and then even more so as we go into the push-up. It's important that you think about keeping that shape throughout the duration of the exercise. Another common error that people make is that they rest their arms on the straps and there's contact. Now to fix this, you want to actively turn your shoulders and rings out. That way the strap is more next to your arm instead of on top and in front of your arm. And you'll see this will greatly increase the intensity of the exercise. It's harder to stabilize, but you're going to get more out of the exercise itself. To scale up the exercise and make it harder, lower the rings. To make it easier, raise the rings or walk forwards a little bit. Getting good at this plank and push-up position is a gateway to more chest exercises that we want to show you. The next exercise is one of my favorites. It's called the archer push-up. Now this is essentially a hybrid between a normal ring push-up and a ring fly. It's a developmental exercise that will lead to more difficult things like the ring fly or something like the iron cross on rings. To perform this exercise, you want to start off in that high plank position again with straight arms. However, I like to stress that people separate their legs a little bit. This will help us stay nice and straight as we perform the exercise. As we perform and descend, we want to bend one arm like we're doing a push-up, while the other arm simultaneously will move directly to the side while staying straight. And as you reach the bottom position, one side will look like the bottom of the bent arm push-up, and the other side will look like the bottom of a ring fly. You want to hold this position briefly, and as you're ascending back to the top, you want to maintain the lock arm while the other one is straightening to finish the push-up position to get back to that high plank. And then we will alternate to the other side. Now, key piece in this is the rhythm and the fact that the arms are moving simultaneously but doing 2 different jobs. So the timing aspect of it is going to be important. Now, to scale up or scale down, it's all going to be similar anytime we're dealing with a plank position. Anytime the body is more horizontal and flat, the more difficult this will be. And as you approach a more vertical position, the easier this will be. So to scale it down, we make sure that the rings are lower in relation to our feet. And to scale up, we're going to raise the rings or walk forwards to change the orientation of our body. And this is also going to be important to keep in mind because the arm must maintain lock to do this correctly, which is an unusual stress for the elbow, and you don't want to do too much too soon. A couple of common errors that we see with the archer push-up is a shrugged shoulder, similar to what you might see in normal push-ups. And this is probably because the stress is too much. You want to make it a little bit easier. And similar to the push-up, we see a sagging core. Anytime we're starting off on a plank, we kind of forget to really engage the core and neutralize the spine. So make sure that you're thinking about this throughout the duration of the exercise. Our next exercise is one of the most difficult core exercises out there. It's called the rings fallout. Now, this is essentially the ab roller or ab exercise performed on the rings. So we're going to assume the same plank position that we've been doing with the rings nice and low. And as you start in this position, you really need to stress that the glutes and the core are engaged because this exercise will intensify immediately. So as we're in the high plank position, we will be extending the arms away from our hips. And you're going to try to extend as far out as possible and then return back to the plank position. And as I'm mentioning, any millimeter further that you go, it will intensify. So a common error here is, you guessed it again, the sagging hips. You must really make sure you've got the pelvic tilt, the core engaged, and the glutes fired up because you must maintain a rigid shape as you fall out and extend the body. Now, ideally, we want to keep the arms locked in this exercise because it will help supplement other lock arm work that we're doing. If you're feeling stress in the elbows, bend the arms a little bit and just make sure that you're keeping good tension on the rings. Now, if this exercise is too difficult, which it is for many, we want to scale it down, so we can do a couple of things. We can go on our knees instead of our feet, or we can simply move the body forwards again with higher rings to orient our body a little bit more upright, and this will be a little bit less stressful on the core. Now, alternatively, if you want to make it more intense, lower the rings and make sure that you're starting with the rings below the attachment point and extend the body out as far as possible, maintaining that flat shape, no arching in the lower back. Hold it for a couple of seconds and then return. This is the rings fall out exercise. Our next featured exercise is a horizontal pull exercise, which is the ring row. We're going to continue with being on the low rings, but instead of being in a plank, we're going to be hanging below the rings in what looks like an upside down plank. Our body will be horizontal, we'll be hanging below the rings, and we'll be in a straight line just as we were with the plank. Now, the start position here has a little bit more detail to it. We're going to be squeezing the glutes. We're going to start off with protracted shoulders, and I want you to think about pushing your heels into the ground similar to how we were pushing our feet into the ground with the push-up. This is going to turn on your hamstrings and ensure that your body stays in a straight line. To perform the first rep, we're going to squeeze and retract the shoulders and then carry on with the pull portion of the exercise, trying to get the chest as close as possible to the rings. After you reach this position, it'll be fully retracted with the shoulders at the top, and then slowly return back down by straightening your arms and finishing back in that horizontal hang position. A common error that people make is they will start with piked or bent hips, and then as they perform the row, they will aggressively open the hips, making it an explosive movement with less pulling effort from the arms. But in reality, you want to make sure that you're keeping your body in one shape, straight, rigid, and it's all really coming from the arm pull and upper back muscles initiating the movement rather than a hip open. To make the exercise a little bit easier, raise the rings up or move your feet backwards, and this will orient your body a little bit more vertical to make the exercise easier. And then conversely, you would do the opposite if you want to make it harder. Lower the rings, walk forwards a little bit, and this will be a little bit more challenging. So that's the ring row, which we like to feature because this will focus on the upper back and lats and really help that upper body strength grow. Let's continue building that upper body strength with a vertical push exercise. We're going to do the pike push-up. We will continue using the low rings. However, we want our feet closer to the rings and compared to the plank-based positions we started from. The start position will be an inverted V shape with the hips at the top and both the feet and hands at the bottom. We want to make sure that the arms are straight. We want to make sure that the arms are locked with the rings turned out. Head is in line with the shoulders. Quads are engaged to keep the legs straight, and the core must be engaged to maintain that pike position in the first place. We've established both the start and end positions of each rep. Now to perform the first rep, we want to keep tension on the rings, slowly lower the body by bending the arms, and the head should go both forwards and downwards in front of the rings. After reaching the bottom position, you want to hold that briefly and then return back to the start position of that inverted V shape by locking the arms out and turning the rings. So a couple of common errors that we see in this exercise. First, people rest on the straps. Easier, they like to rest on the straps to make things more stable. However, you're reducing the benefits you can gain from the exercise. So we want to make sure that we turn both the shoulders and the rings outward and keeping them there throughout the duration of the exercise. Another common error that we can see is that people's elbows are going more to the side of them rather than staying in that 45-degree plane. To make the exercise easier, I would recommend performing them on the ground or parallettes. To make it harder, you can start the inverted V shape with your shoulders leaning forward a little bit, which will take some weight off of your feet, and then perform the exercise in that orientation. That wraps up part 1 of our series where we covered the first 5 exercises. Now stay tuned for part 2 where we tackle the remaining 5. You won't want to miss it. One thing that we've realized from training thousands of calisthenics athletes is that if your training is not personalized, it can hinder your progress, leave you injured, stuck, or plateaued. With the movement athlete, instead of having beginner, intermediate, and advanced exercises, we have exercises that'll be tailored specifically to you. It's also important to be well-rounded with your training. For example, some people have really strong legs, they might have weaker arm pulling muscles, or are lacking the shoulder mobility for handstands. You are a unique individual, and your levels of strength, mobility, and flexibility are different from everyone else's, and your training should reflect that. If you want to build skills, get stronger, and do it in a holistic way that will keep you healthy for years and help reduce injury, you've got to personalize your training. But the reality with personal training is that it can be pretty pricey, and it's often not available for what you want. And that's why we created the Movement Athlete Assessment.